Hi YouTube, welcome to another edition of Horror Hands, and for this video I'm going to go through all the Blu-rays and DVDs that I picked up in the month of July. So I've got a lot of movies, 50 movies in total, so I'm going to try and move through this video as quickly as I can. So without further ado, the first movie from Redemption is Jess Franco's A Virgin Amongst the Living Dead. This is just a film that I've always wanted to see. Not had a chance to watch it yet, but finally picked it up a couple of weeks ago and looking forward to finally checking it out. Because it's Jess Franco, I'm not too sure how it's going to be, but like I say, it's just one that I've wanted to get for a while. That's that one. The next movie from 101 Films is Before Dawn. This movie wasn't too bad. This is a low budget British film. This couple who've got this failing marriage, they go for a weekend to this cottage in the countryside and a virus breaks out which creates like 28 days later type zombies. It's pretty good. It's got some really creepy moments in it and then some really intense scenes. It's a pretty decent effort. I enjoyed it. Only thing with this one is it's depressing. It was depressing from the start and it just gets worse. But like I say, not a bad effort for a low budget movie. Right, next movie is ATM. So I saw Jason from Horrific Nightmares. He reviewed this as one of his slashback reviews. Thank you, Jason, for the review. This movie, there was things about it that I enjoyed. It's a pretty good premise and a pretty good sort of taut thriller. The only thing that let this movie down for me was the characters make some of the most stupidest decisions I've ever seen in a film. I could literally have got a pen and paper and wrote a page of the stupid things that they did. Even to the point an hour in where they're running to safety and they're pretty much at safety and then they turn back and go back to the ATM. Just things like that really irritated me. But it was a movie that I enjoyed, so again I want to thank Jason for recommending this. Finally got that one in the collection. Next movie from Severin is Birdemic. Still not had a chance to watch this yet. I've heard it's terrible. I've had a few comments when I showed this in my Severin video saying it is terrible but it's entertaining at the same time. So we'll see about that one. Next movie, also from Severin, is The Blood Drinkers, another one of these low budget Philippine movies. Again, not had a chance to watch this. I have watched a few of the Severin ones, but not these two. But again, looking forward to checking this one out at some point. Right, next movie from SRS is Cannibal Messiah. So I saw Mr. Wicker had reviewed this one, and he said it was okay, but I picked it up because I found it at really cheap price, and sometimes these SRS titles can be a bit expensive, so I'm expecting the typical low budget trash from this one. Hopefully it'll be a bit gory as well. I know Mr. Wicker had a few decent things to say about it, so thank you to him for that review. Okay, next up from Severin is Cathys Curse. This one I enjoyed. This was a pretty good film, a bit of a mix of like The Exorcist and The Omen, all taking place in like this big house, and this creepy stuff happening to this girl that ends up in people getting killed off. It's not too bad, pretty effective in places. Other times it was a bit hokey, but overall an enjoyable film. Right, next up is The Collector. Watched this many years ago and enjoyed it. Got it again just so I could check it out, and I enjoyed it again. It's a pretty decent movie, quite mean-spirited in places. It's got some good kills, like a home invasion type movie. This guy breaks into a house, but at the same time this collector guy is in there as well. I can't remember the reason why he's in there now, but it's a pretty good film, pretty decent. Okay, next up from 101 Films is The Colossus of New York. A pretty fun 1950s movie. This scientist gets killed and he's brought back to life as like this big Colossus monster, but he's not too happy about that, so he goes around destroying things and killing people with these like laser beam eyes. Nothing special, but very enjoyable kind of 1950s movie. I had a lot of fun with that one. Next up from Severin is Curse of the Vampires, another one of these low budget Philippine movies. I've not watched this one yet, but I'll be checking it out soon. Right, next movie is The Darkest Hour. So this is about these people. I think they're in Russia, and there's an alien invasion, and they have to sort of fight to survive this alien invasion. And the aliens are kind of like, they just sort of, they're like, I can't think, beams of light or electricity that run through the city. It's not a bad film. I didn't find the aliens scary, because most of the time you don't know that they're there, and when they are, they're just like a flicker of electricity. So there's a little bit of an anticlimax with the aliens themselves, but the movie itself was pretty enjoyable. I thought that one was alright. Okay, next movie from Sleazebox. The first movie I've ever bought from Sleazebox, and that is Death Escort Service. So I've never seen this. I didn't really know much to expect. I don't really know much about Sleazebox themselves. I don't see them all that much. So when I saw this, I wanted to get it. If anyone has seen this movie, let me know what you think. All I'm expecting is ultra sleaze and some shot on video trash. But I'm looking forward to checking it out. And since I got the first one, I also picked up Death Escort Service 2. I believe there might be a part 3 as well, but again, I don't know much about these movies or Sleazebox as a company. So they're two new kind of purchases for me, which is exciting. Okay, moving from a completely different film altogether from Death Escort Service is Dr. Jekyll and Mr Hyde. This is, I don't know if this is the original. This is from 1932 though, so it's certainly an old adaptation of the story. And I've never seen this. I haven't got many Dr. Jekyll type movies, so I wanted to get one and came across this. So I thought I'll give the 1930s one a watch. So again, looking forward to checking this one out. Right, next up is Emmanuel and Francois, some Joe D'Amato trash. I've not had a chance to watch it yet, but I have heard good things about this one actually. I've heard this is a pretty good movie, so I'll have to give this one a watch soon and see what it's like. Right, next up, some Arrow. I got Evil Ed. This is a movie that I enjoy. I know a lot of people like this. Some people aren't too keen on like the humour and the silliness of this film, but it's always been one that I've enjoyed. So happy to pick this up. And this Arrow Blu-ray is really nice. I think it's like a 3-disc edition, if I remember right. So that's cool. Right, next up from Scream Factory is Evil of Frankenstein. I really enjoyed this film. Very enjoyable Hammer horror Frankenstein movie. The monster doesn't look great, but he's still really cool. And of course, Peter Cushing is wonderful as ever as the Baron. So yeah, if you like Hammer and if you like Frankenstein, highly recommend this one. This was a really nice set from Scream Factory. So that's cool. And then next up from Retro Media is Evil Toons. This is a film I've always wanted to see this. Never got round to it, but finally picked it up, watched it last night, and I had a lot of fun with this film. It's not one that you can take seriously, but I thought it was really entertaining. And I love the scene where Dick Miller is watching TV and he's watching himself in a bucket of blood. That was really cool. So yeah, if you like your non-serious stuff, definitely check this one out. I always thought this was a kind of a PG movie, but it's got like a ton of nudity in it. So if that's your kind of thing in horror films, check this one out. Right, next up, also from Retro Media, is The Faceless Monster. So I bought this. I thought this was a blind buy, but it says on the back of this case that it's also known as Nightmare Castle, and I already have Nightmare Castle. But I'll keep this as The Faceless Monster. I really like this release. And I don't remember Nightmare Castle, so I'm going to watch this again as Faceless Monster and check out this movie again. But I love that cover art as well. That's really cool cover art. So that's that one. next up from Retro Media again is Fangs of the Living Dead. I've been eyeing up the Scream Factory Blu-ray of this one, but I found this DVD for really cheap, so I thought this'll do for me, and I quite like Retro Media releases, so that's pretty cool. But not watched this movie yet, don't really know much about it at all. It's just a title that I've come across over time, so finally got round to picking that one up. Okay, next up we have the new Fantasy Island. And I enjoyed this film. I thought this was a pretty clever film. This is about groups of people who go to Fantasy Island to live out their fantasy, live out their dream. But each one has a dark turn. And the people that are on the island, their stories interlink and things like that. So a clever thing, some clever stuff going on in this movie. I enjoyed it. It's not amazing. The Blumhouse have certainly made better movies than this, but like I say, I did enjoy it, and I liked how the stories panned out and how it worked out that people's dreams weren't exactly what they expected. Pretty good movie. Right, next up is Frankenstein versus the Mummy. This was okay. I watched this right at the beginning of the month. Pretty standard stuff. It kind of has the feel of like a Sci-Fi Channel movie. I don't know if it is or not, but it certainly felt like one of them. It's okay. It's just average. There's not much of Frankenstein fighting the Mummy, but they are in the movie quite a bit, and the Mummy in particular looks really good in this movie, so that was pretty good. Okay, next up is Haunt. A group of teenagers go to a haunted house Halloween attraction and find out that it's like real. There's people in there being killed for real. This I thought was very run of the mill. It was okay, but very standard stuff. And it occurred to me that the place they're in was not that hard to escape, but they kept doing stupid things. It was okay. Hellfest, I thought, told a similar story and was a much better film than Haunt. But like I say, it was okay. Right, next up from 101 Films is The Girl on the Third Floor. I have watched this on Netflix, but it's been a while. I didn't think it was all that good, to be honest, but I found this Blu-ray for pretty cheap, and I wouldn't mind just checking it out again, just to give it a rewatch. So, pick that one up. Next up, from Asylum, is The Haunting of Whaley House. Now, Asylum usually do really bad films. 95% of their movies are terrible. But this one I did enjoy. This one was a pretty good movie. Nothing special, but in terms of Asylum, comparably, it was one of the best I've seen from them. Pretty entertaining stuff. This is about a bunch of kids that sneak into a haunted house to spend the night looking around, so you can imagine what goes on there. Okay, halfway there. Right, next up from Severin is The Horrors of Spider Island. This movie I really enjoyed. This one was a lot of fun. So it's like a 60s black and white film about a group of like supermodels who crash land on this island, and yeah, they're attacked by giant spider monsters. I didn't actually know that giant spiders were in this. I thought Spider Island was just the name of the island, but no, it is actually giant spiders that come after them, and they kind of float down from the trees, and you see their arms coming out from the trees trying to grab the women. It's pretty cool stuff. It kind of really lulls in the middle of the film. These sailors come on the island, and there's a little nonsense about which supermodel is in love with who. So it does get a bit dull in the midsection of the film, but really enjoyable. And I love the spider monster creatures in this film. It was good fun. Right, next up from Arrow is I See You. And I cannot recommend this movie highly enough. I thought this was excellent. It was such a well-made film. There was themes of like Hereditary in this film. There was some spooky elements to it, but then there was also like a very sort of human and domestic type horror thing going on in this movie. Very twisty turny and excellently made. Really impressed with this film. I thought it was excellent. So thank you, Arrow, for that one. Next up from Arrow is Incident in a Ghostland. This film, I thought it was okay. I've heard a lot of good things about this one. I thought it was alright. It pans out pretty well as a horror film, but I was a little bit confused at times as to what was going on. It's these girls are kind of attacked and kidnapped and kept in this house and tortured and stuff like that, but it keeps flitting back from when they're kids to an adult. And I just got confused by it. I don't know if that's just me, but I didn't quite grasp what was going on, and I couldn't fully get into it. But I don't know. I'm not too sure about this one. But yeah, it was alright. Next up from Code Red is The Man with Two Heads. I haven't had a chance to watch this yet. I found this pretty cheap on eBay, because Code Red aren't the cheapest of companies, but wanted to get this while it was cheap, so I'll give that a watch at some point. Right, next up is Mars Attacks. I've never owned this film. It's a film that I enjoy, but I've never owned it. I have been looking at the Blu-ray, but I've found this on a car boot for like 50p. So I said thank you very much, that'll do for me. So finally got that in the collection. Next up is Midnight. Watched this one right at the beginning of the month. Don't remember it all that well. It's kind of a standard 80s, bit of a Last House on the Left type film, I think. Sort of these women get kidnapped. Is it Last House? I can't remember. I'm sorry. I know it was pretty decent. It was an alright watch, but very standard. So yeah, sorry. Can't remember that one all that much. Right, next up, a bit of kind of like PG family horror here. Monsters Unleashed. This one looks like it'll be fun. I actually really like kind of PG horror movies if they're done right. So if they get the balance between like horror and kids stuff right, I find that they're really enjoyable films. So hopefully this one will be a bit of a laugh and will be entertaining. I'll give it a watch soon in the next few days. Got a bit of like a Goosebumps vibe with that one. I'm not sure. Okay, next up from Mill Creek. This is the Mothra Steelbook. Haven't seen Mothra for years, so I wanted to pick this one up. It comes with like the see-through slip cover, so it slides up like that, if you can see that. And yeah, really nice edition. Haven't watched it yet. I will get around to doing so. As a kid, I don't think I was into Mothra all that much. I was more of a Godzilla kind of guy. But I'm looking forward to watching this again and seeing what it's like. Okay, next up from Code Red is Night Child. This one I didn't really care for. Couldn't really get into this one all that much. It's like where Beyond the Door was a silly rip-off of The Exorcist. This is a silly rip-off of Beyond the Door. So it's like a third generation rip-off. Yeah, nothing special with this one, guys. I couldn't recommend this one. So yeah. It's got Richard Johnson in it though, which is pretty cool. It's also got this girl, this young girl. She appeared in lots of Italian horror films in the 70s and 80s. So it's always good to see her in things. From what I can see, she actually stopped acting and went on to be a doctor. So yeah, pretty interesting. Right, next up from Wild Eye is Nighthau. I've seen a few people picking this up. I know Hobbs Horror reviewed it and said it was a pretty good film. This film was made for $1,000, which is insane. I didn't think it was possible to make a film for $1,000. So naturally, this movie isn't the best, but for $1,000, it's a really good effort. I mean, in terms of Wild Eye as well, I would say this is better than 95% of things that Wild Eye puts out. It was a really good film, very good effort. This guy, he has like these night terrors of people around him being attacked by a werewolf. There's a bit more to it. I won't give away the story, but it's obviously very low budget, but enjoyable and a really decent effort. I commend them for what they did with $1,000. So that was pretty cool. Next up from Scream Factory is Nightmares. A pretty cool anthology from the 80s. I enjoyed the one where Emilio Estevez is fighting the arcade thing. That was pretty cool. And I like the one where Richard Mazur is under attack from a giant rat in his house, although the effects in that were awful. The rat itself looked dreadful. Horrible effects. But yeah, pretty cool movie. Right, next up from Kino, a bit of 50s monster movie action with the Phantom from 10,000 Leagues. Watched this last night. This is pretty enjoyable. The monster looks terrible, but in my world it's still cool. I always enjoy movies like this, so I enjoy checking this one out. Pretty enjoyable film. Okay, next up, this is one that I'm interested in watching. This is Possum. I know Horror in Todge did a review on this one, and apparently it's one that like really gets under your skin. So I'm gonna be watching this one soon. I wanted to put this on when I've got time to really focus on what's going on. So yeah, very intrigued by this one. So pick that one up. Next up from Arrow, we got The Prey. This is one that I got when I was out and about with Tony from Horror in Todge. Found this in HMV with the slip, which is now out of print. So I wanted to get that. The movie itself is very slow, like very, very slow. I think I said before I enjoyed it for different reasons, like looking at the scenery and the wildlife, because it's set in this really nice forest area. So it was a film that I enjoyed, but not for its horror aspects. But happy to finally have that edition in the collection. Okay, next up I have Resident Evil, is this Degeneration? Yeah, Resident Evil Degeneration. So I own all the Resident Evil live action movies. I'm now moving on to the CGI movies. This film was pretty good. I enjoyed it, had a good time watching it. It's a little bit complicated in terms of the story. I think it helps if you play the games, which I don't, but my best friend, he does play them, so he tends to fill in the gaps for me in my Resident Evil knowledge. So yeah, just working my way through these now. Right, next up from Severin is Robo War, Bruno Mattei's shameless rip-off of Predator, but without the Predator, it's like a cyborg robot creature that's hunting down this team of commandos. It's very cheesy. It's quite laughable in places, but I did have a good time watching this film. It's pretty entertaining. I do really like the commando team in this. They really do shoot first and ask questions later. It's really very gung ho, really funny. But yeah, not a bad film. Right, next up is a steelbook for The Shape of Water. I really don't like when they don't put titles on the front of steelbooks. For me, that's a lousy design. But I'm probably nitpicking there. It is a beautiful looking steelbook, and this is 4K as well. And I did watch the film. Really interesting and intriguing movie. There's things about it that I didn't like, but there's certainly things about it that I did. And it's quite a beautiful story overall. And Michael Shannon's in this, who is like fantastic in anything that he does, and he's amazing in this as a real sort of sinister bad guy. And I also love the creature, kind of like a creature from the Black Lagoon type monster in this. Yeah, really interesting film. I did enjoy Shape of Water. Not quite what I was expecting, but good. Next up, I really need to check this one out because I'm intrigued by this one. The Sinful Dwarf. I'll have to give this a watch soon. I really don't know what to expect from this. I have no idea what it's going to be like. It just looks crazy. So, yeah, we'll be giving that a watch soon. Next up from Arrow, I have The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Miss Osborne. It's a film that I've always been interested about, and this really is a strange film. Really strange. Don't really know too much what to say about it. I can't say I enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy it. It was just too weird for me. And Udo Kier is in it, who for me is usually wonderful in everything that he does. But I felt it was a little bit underutilised in this. It could have been used a bit better. But very strange film. Very strange film. So yeah. Next up from Arrow is The Tomb of Ligeia. This was pretty good. I didn't like it as much as some of the other Corman Edgar Allan Poe movies, but it was entertaining, and Vincent Price is just amazing anyway, so that was pretty cool. Right, next up, this is actually an upgrade. I don't get many upgrades, but this is a Tremors attack pack. Found this really cheap, and I did have this on DVD, but it was really tattered up, and it annoyed me every time I saw it. So I found this cheap, and also I had a real hankering to watch Tremors 2. That's my favourite Tremors film. It's the first one that I ever saw, and for some reason I just really want to watch Tremors 2. I still haven't got around to watching it, but I will watch Tremors 2 at some point. But I really like those movies, especially the first two. Right, next up from Network is Unearthly Stranger. I saw Alan Scouser talk highly about this on his channel, and yeah, I really enjoyed this. Thank you, Alan, for the recommendation. Really interesting British movie from the 60s. A bit Twilight Zone-y, I would say. It's hard to kind of give you the story without giving things away, but I enjoyed it, yeah. Pretty much like an episode of the Twilight Zone. So that was cool. Next up, this is kind of a bit of a wild card purchase, I think, from Criterion, and it's the Virgin Spring. So Ingmar Bergman film. I usually really like Ingmar Bergman movies, and this movie is known as a precursor to Last House on the Left. It might not look like it is, but I've heard that Last House on the Left is a remake of this film. So in this film, this woman is raped and murdered on the way to church, and the culprits take refuge at her parents' place. Her dad's played by Max von Sydow, and when they find out what they've done, they exact their murderous revenge on the culprit. So you can see very Last House on the Lefty. So it's a very kind of early, kind of arty take on the rape and revenge film, which the exploitation genre would later run with. But it's a film that I'm very intrigued to see. Like I say, Ingmar Bergman films are always an interesting watch, so I've got it for those reasons, really. So I'll be checking this one out soon. Okay, next up is Winchester. This one I was a little bit disappointed with. I was really looking forward to seeing this one. I thought I'll dim the lights and watch like an old-fashioned ghost story, but it was okay. It just wasn't as effective as I thought it would be. So in this one, Helen Mirren, she owns the Winchester Rifle Company, and she lives in this big mansion, and she's haunted by guilt of all the people that have been killed by a Winchester rifle. It's a little bit ropey. And she keeps extending the mansion to cater for these spirits and ghosts of the people that have died. It's got a few... I like the setting, and I like the plot. It takes place in the early 1900s. It's just got a terrible plot. It's a really bad plot. Having said that, it said it's based on a true story, so who knows. And the last film, finally got a copy of World War Z. This movie was okay. I much prefer the second half to the first half. The first half was a bit frantic and all over the place for me. The second half, when they got into the laboratory, I thought was much better. Certainly had some good moments. Brad Pitt was fantastic in it. I just like my zombie films a bit more slow and traditional, I think. So, thank you so much for watching that, guys. That was a long video, a lot of movies there. As always, let me know what you think of these movies. If you've seen any, let me know what you think. Thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more videos.